So, today is a very exciting day. Yeah, let me double check. Sure am. We're going to talk about sessions and cookies and Flash. We're going to start with cookies, actually. So, more like cookies, sessions, and Flash. It's going to be amazing. It's one of my favorite lectures in the entire curriculum. And it's Monday, and I'm in a good mood. This is flashing, right? It's not just me. Okay, I'm going to just quit this and go back in. The app we're going to be working on today is going to be an app where you vote on your favorite colors. If you click on this little button here with the emoji in it, it creates a new vote for a specific color. That part is already done. The part that we're going to work on today is limiting the number of votes you can cast to 5. As you can see, I can cast as many votes as I want for this lovely pinkish color with impunity. And what we're going to do over the course of this lecture is make it so that you can only vote 5 times and that you see your number of votes decreasing as you go. And then once you have 0 votes remaining, you can't do the thing anymore. And we're going to do this with cookies. In the process, we're going to talk about what cookies are and how they work, what it means that HTTP is stateless, how I can get around the New York Times paywall, how we can use cookies in a Rails app, and what kind of data we can and should store in a cookie. We're going to talk about how we can and should use sessions in a Rails app and how we can use Flash in a Rails app. Finally. Third one? This one right here? Great. I'm going to circle back to that, but first I have a quick announcement. So I told you I was going to the tap dance thing on Friday. Yeah, it was awesome. The weird thing is, after I left, I was I don't actually know what happened. There's this period in my memory that's totally blank, and I figured out that this guy had come up to me because I found this picture in my camera roll, and he apparently came up to me, and there was this flash of light, and ever since then, I don't remember this happening, but apparently it did. And ever since then, I haven't been able to remember anyone's name. Yeah, it's really weird. And I was going to have everyone do a round of names just so that I can refresh on all of them. But the weird thing is I can't remember any new names either. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, I have a bunch of name tags. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to give you all names as you need to ask questions. And then if you have another request or a question or anything like that, just remind me what your name is that I've written down on the name tag, and we'll make this work. Don't worry, I'm totally fine. I remember everything about programming, and I remember you're a great mod, and I remember sort of who you are. I just don't remember your names, and I'm never going to be able to remember them again. And I've come to, it's fine. It'll be fine.
Wait, I'm going to know more about this guy.
I do too, but all I have is this picture. I don't know. I wish I knew more about him too. Let's talk about the New York Times paywall though. We got to stay on task. So when you go to the New York Times, you've got a bunch of different articles that you can read. Let's see. This looks like a good one. And as you read through different articles, it'll give you this warning. You have reached your limit of free articles. I've already read too many articles in the New York Times. And they're not going to let me read this article about where to move to get away from climate change. Apparently it's Duluth, which, yikes. Miguel, what do you do?
So whenever you go to any of these websites, they save every instance with the cookies.
Yeah.
And they're able to access it. Now, every browser now, they have a private feature,
a
private browser feature, so it doesn't save any cookies. So because it doesn't save any cookies, the New York Times is then able to track how many times you view the page.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what you can do is you can, if you don't delete the URL entirely, you can grab the URL out of this and you can go into an incognito tab Incognito tabs have their own sort of like bucket of cookies, and we'll talk more about what cookies are and how they work in just a second. But if I go to this same website, same URL, same browser, just an incognito tab, the New York Times is like, oh, you have four free articles remaining. Great. Over here, even if I refresh, I've still reached my limit of free articles. But if I just gotta get that article, I can go over here into an incognito tab, and I still have 4 free articles remaining. I can read this whole thing, find out that I need to move to Duluth, and then go on to some other one. Ooh, yikes, giant sea spiders, okay. And at this point, I should have 3 free articles remaining. 4 weeks free of that, okay, fine. Let's read another one. How the ice fish got its transparent blood and see-through skull. Yeah, okay. How many articles remaining? Come on. 2 free articles remaining, right? This is my 3rd free article that I've read. New York Times is tracking me slowly, reducing my number of articles as I read one at a time. The New York Times uses cookies to track how many articles we've read, or more specifically, who we are on the web. Who knows what a cookie is? Oh, Your name is maybe Potato. People might just remind me that your name is Potato anytime you have like a question or a request. Wait. Let's listen to what was your name again? Yeah. Got it. Okay, so it comes from the client, or? Got it. Okay. So the cookie is from the server. It's set by the server, and then what happens? Yeah. So based on that cookie, the server is then able to track certain things that the client does. For example, here, 2 free articles. Does anyone know how cookies are sent from the server to the client? Like what part of the HTTP request response cycle holds all of the cookies? I love wrong answers. They're usually more interesting and a better learning opportunity. The name is going to be River. If you might just like remind me that your name is River if you have any questions or requests.
I was going to say the header.
Yeah, it's in the actual headers of the request. So I'm gonna shut this down and go back into the NewYorkTimes.com. We can see headers for any request in the network tab. So let's open up the network tab and we can check out the headers for this first request, no cookies set, to the New York Times. All right, that's a lot of requests. I'm gonna filter this down to just the document requests. And this is the first initial get to nytimes.com. So we're looking for a header, and we're looking for a header in the response, right? So we've got our client making a request to the New York Times server. And the first time that a cookie is set, it's in the response. This is the New York Times telling my computer, hey, here is the value of your cookie. Here is that header. It's called set cookie. Easily enough. And the value has a couple things in it. The domain for the cookie, anything.nytimes.com, the path, the expiration date for this particular cookie, should take us into 2020. And then, what's this right here? What does it look like? Actually, this one might be a little bit easier to recognize. Hold on, let me, Tree. Your name is going to be Tree. Purpose of this lecture. Can you just remind me that your name is Tree anytime you have a question or a request?
Yes. My name is Tree.
Uh-huh.
Is it the link that you're reading?
Mm.
The article?
Mm. That's a great thought. I actually have no idea what the data is encapsulated in this code. My guess is this one is my region, NYT, Geo, US. Guessing Geos for geographic and US is the United States. But really, I have no way of knowing. I'm guessing the NYT GDPR is that like I haven't said anything about cookies. The general data protection rule is something that EU imposes on cookies, interestingly enough. But this one, I have no idea what is in there. Probably yes, some kind of identifier that tracks the articles. NYTA. I don't know. It's up to them. It's up to the server to set that cookie, and interestingly enough, to interpret what it means when it comes back. What I want you to see here is that we've got a key value pair in each case. This equal sign is just the same as you would see in a query string, and just like in a query string, this is the key and this is the value. Key, value, key, value. I may not know what's in that value. There's a standard format in every set cookie header, and it's just key value pair string data. So this is how cookies are set. What happens next? After the server sets a cookie in the response, what happens after that? What happens if I go back to the New York Times page? Hold on a second. Your name is Brock. You can mind just like remind me of your name. Okay, give me a question or a request.
Rock speaking. I think request for you.
Tell me more about that.
Will, I guess, ask to see the folder of cookies in the jar.
The cookie, the server will sort of like ask the client, hey, give me your cookies.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost.
My
Yeah. What actually happens is the browser coughs them up every time. So, and effectively the same thing is accomplished, but the browser just like mindlessly repeats them every single time. You'll notice in the request headers, we just have authority method path schema accept encoding DNT, upgraded secure requests, user agent. No cookies when we made this initial request to the NewYorkTimes.com. At this point, I've got an extension on my browser that shows the current status of all my cookies, and holy moly, look at all of these. I don't even know where they came from, because these are more than I had set cookie headers for. But if I refresh this page one more time, this is a second visit to the New York Times, take a look at my request headers. This is a monster header. But you'll notice NYTA, NYT GDPR, NYT Geo. The same keys that were in the set cookie headers from last time. The browser, by default, on every subsequent request, will repeat back every single cookie that the server has set on it, at least for that particular domain, automatically. Once the server sets the cookie, the browser is in charge of repeating it back. And it's really, really good at doing just that. Questions about any of that? Sorry, what was your name? Thank you.
So the cookies never change. It's always going to be back to some cookies that are used.
So, good question. Do the cookies ever change? Yes. The server keeps sending set cookie headers in the response. With a new value, I think, I don't know, I'm not good at recognizing hexadecimal strings or base 64, whatever this is. But the server can continue to set cookies and reset cookies after they're initially set. So for example, if I got sick of your name being potato, I could maybe like rename you pancakes later or something like that. And yes, the rumors are true. I do give out cookies in this lecture. These name tags are cookies. I am a server. You are all clients. And with every request, I've asked you to repeat the values of your cookies to me, just as a proper web browser would. So why is it important that HTTP is stateless? Why did I pretend to have lost my memory? Why do web servers act like that? Why don't they just keep track of the names of all of the clients they have, maybe by IP or some other identifier?
That's too much work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work for me. It would be way easier if I didn't have to remember your names. But also, it's just sort of built into the HTTP protocol. Servers, by definition, need all of the information to fulfill a request to be included in the request. And by included in the request, I mean headers too. Based on the headers, based on the value of cookies, web servers make decisions about how to show content. And the big picture of this, the most common use of cookies is authentication and authorization. Let's take a look at Twitter. So I'm currently logged in to Twitter in this particular tab. If I go into an incognito tab, am I going to be logged into Twitter in the incognito tab? No. This is actually really handy if you ever want a friend to like log into Twitter on your computer, but you don't want to log yourself out, or your friend doesn't want to like accidentally leave themselves logged in because they've got like, I don't know, maybe they're an influencer. But the reason this works is that authentication on Twitter and on almost every website relies on cookies. If we look in the network tab on this particular page, when my browser makes the request to Twitter, oh my gosh, look at all of these friggin' cookies. Some of these have nothing to do with authentication or authorization, but some of them mean that I am logged in as Fort 4960 North Marine 912 and not as any other user. Actually, there's an easier way to look at this. Here's all of my cookies listed out. And I don't actually know anything about the internal workings of Twitter beyond like having done this lecture before. Which cookie do you think is in charge of making sure that I'm authenticated to Twitter? Serena? I do know. Yeah, charade is over. Do you want a name tag anyway? I have 2 left. Yeah. All right. Morning. Nice. I agree. And you're right, because I've tried this before. All right. Your name is going to be Grass. Okay. So auth token has a weird value in it. This looks like hexadecimal to me. I can't like read this auth token, but I can copy and paste it. Let's go over here into my incognito session. So I don't have a cookie over here called auth token. I have this Twitter sesh thing. I'm going to clear these out. I'm going to add this auth. Was it auth token? Yeah, okay. All right, let's try that again. Auth token. Slap the value in there. Refresh the page. Boom. This is being recorded, and yes, you could type that into your own Twitter and log in as this account. Please don't. It turns the lights on and off in my bedroom, and I like to sleep at night. Anyway, cookies contain important data about users. Cookies help websites uniquely identify their users. And they do that by passing back and forth key value pairs in headers. Those key value pairs can go from the mundane, just the number of articles you've read this month, to your actual login details. And I want to make one thing specific. The contents of that cookie are probably not the login details. It's not my username and password inside that cookie. But it's a token that if the server recognizes it, the server can recognize it as me. We'll talk more about how that works tomorrow. All right, any questions conceptually at all about cookies? Dan?
So when you need a cookie, when you delete a cookie, I got it. So, will it be permanently deleted? Like, we do it from the, or the resource tab or the network? No.
I don't know of any way that browsers would keep around cookies. I mean, if I delete these here with the extension, I'm just like hella logged out of Twitter immediately. And as far as I know, there's no way to get them back. There could be one. Yeah, but here's the weird thing. They're still showing up. I have no idea. Maybe I have to refresh. I don't know. If you delete them through your browser, I think there's a way to do that. Maybe under, I don't know. It's like buried in some menu here. Generally, they're gone forever, which is okay because you can always log back into Twitter as long as you know your password and you get a new cookie. Cookies are kind of disposable, generally speaking. But yeah, I don't think there's a way to get them back unless you've like backed them up somehow. What else?
Is there a reason why it's called cookie?
I don't know. Okay, so what I remember about this is that it's a Hansel and Gretel thing. Like they left the cookie crumbs to be able to find their way back through the forest. Yeah. Other than that, there's no like technical reason that's super important why they're called cookies. Want to do it in Rails? Let's do it in Rails. All right. So in my Rails app, I want to use cookies to figure out how many votes we've got left. In this case, we're hard-coded at 5. We're not setting any cookies, I don't think. Oh, except sort of we are. Never mind that for now. There is this like default favorite colors session cookie that this site sets with a bunch of like garbage in it that I can't read. We'll talk about that in a second. But for the time being, let's take a look at some code. Let's throw a bybug into our index on the colors controller. Then let's see what we can do. Oh. It was Ruby readline that I needed to add to my bundle file. Let's try this again. Come on. You can do it. Okay, here we are. We're trying to make a request to the index, and we're stuck in a bybug on line 5. This code just redirects us to /colors if we're on the index. Instead, I have 2 routes pointing to this action, and it'll redirect unless it's on the sort of canonical /colors path. And then we grab all the colors out of the database and set them to an @colors instance variable. Okay, what I want to show you is a piece of Rails that you've maybe never seen before. We're going to see a couple of different pieces of Rails that might be new today. We have 2 objects on the controller, on every Rails controller, by virtue of every Rails controller inheriting from application controller and indirectly from action controller.base, that give us information about both the request that was made and the response. So here is an object called request. And oh my God, there's so much in it. It's a method. It's returned by a method called request. If I call self.request, I get that same object. It is an object of type action dispatch request. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this request. One of the things you can do with it is figure out what the path of the request was if you call the path method on that request object. So self.request.path is /colors. Serena. Yeah. think that's the right thing. I don't know. So I can find out things like the path, probably the port, 3000. What else do you want to know about this request? All right, I'm gonna look at the headers. So the headers are another big, huge object. They are an Action Dispatch HTTP headers instance. But the cool thing about headers is they work like a hash. There is no keys argument, unfortunately, keys method. But any of the headers that we sent over with the request are available to us here. So I can look at the value of the cookie header, which is sent with every request. This is you reminding me that your name is River as you ask a question. I, as the server, can see the cookie that you are returning to me that was stored in your browser. Self.request.headers cookie. And what you'll see here is, well, what do you see? Dario.
Key, value.
This big, long garbage thing. Yet, key value pairs, effectively. This is exactly the same as what's in my cookies. If I create a new cookie on the client here, here's my cookie. No, just continue. I don't know. All right, refresh this page. Back on our bybug. Look at this cookie header again. Take a look. I've got the key value pair that I added on my client coming back to the server. On the flip side, I've also got a response object available to me. Anyone remember the name of the header that I need to use to set a cookie as the server? This is me giving you a name tag. Serena. Set hyphen cookie. And if I set that equal to, oh no, equal to a string with some key value pairs in it, baz equals quux, and I think I have to have a semicolon there. Oh no, terminated string needs end of file. All right, let's try this again. What? Okay. Just continue. All right, I don't know why I'm getting that error. Let's see if it actually set the thing. Sure didn't. One more time. Good, there's my response. Headers, set cookie equals. Maybe. Oh, how did you know that? That's amazing. All right, way to go, Eric. You are a magician. Hey, there we go. I've set a cookie. That was hard. That was pretty hard. And What's going to be harder is going back in and then like digging through self.request.headers or whatever it is. Yeah, self request headers cookie. And then like I gotta split these key value pairs apart to see like the foo and the bar and the river and the tree and the favorite color session, which again we haven't even talked about yet. Does anyone think there might be an easier way of doing this? Serena does. Does anyone else think there's an easier way of doing this? Daria thinks there's an easier way of doing this. Does anyone think that no, absolutely not? This is the only way that we can set and get cookies in Rails. Good, because there is an easier way. Serena, do you know what it is? Yes. So eventually we're going to use cookies to make users and logins happen. We're not doing that until tomorrow. But we will get there. Edwin, do you know? Kind of. It's actually even simpler than that. It's a method that is just called cookies. And it's also just hanging out on the application controller. And it's just a plain old hash full of cookies. It might not actually be a plain old hash. Let's see what it actually is. Oh, of course. It's called action dispatch cookies cookie jar because Rails had to be cute about this. So, despite being a cookie jar instance, cookies works exactly like a hash. If you pass it keys, you can get the value back. And if you set those keys, then once you let that request go, if that user comes back, you can get back the value you set, easy as pie. And the amazing thing about this is that if I go to this exact same website in an incognito tab, what's the value of cookies potato going to be here? Wait, let me release this by bug and then come back to the next one. What should the value of cookies potato be here? Empty. Yeah, this is a, oh no, what? Is this an actual incognito tab? No, it's not. All right, that's why. Let's go to an actual incognito tab and try this again. Because you're right, it should be nil. A hash that doesn't have a value established is going to return nil. If a user shows up with no cookie set, this will be nil. But I can set this up to be something else. I don't know why it's giving me so many requests. All right, that's still Graham. Now, if I refresh in this tab, I'm Edwin. And if I go back to the incognito one, you can tell because of this incognito thing over here. I have dark mode on, so it's a little hard to tell by color. Over here, I'm Graham. Each client has its own separate set of cookies. We can set values for each of our clients individually using the hash called cookies on the controller. This is great. It makes using cookies really, really easy. You don't have to worry about headers on a day-to-day basis because Rails abstracts that away for you into just a hash that you can get and set values from. And it'll figure out the headers for you. Rails still sends the set cookie header. It still looks for the cookies header from the client, but it parses that into a hash and turns the hash back into headers sent back out to the client. You as a web developer need to know that cookies get transmitted by headers stored on the client and returned back to the server. You as a Rails developer also can just use a hash called cookies on the controller to do everything you need to do. So let's take a quick break and then we'll use this to do the thing. Okay, so when we left off, we were talking about cookies. We were talking about this lovely hash that Rails gives you called cookies that lets you set and get cookies for every single one of your clients individually as they visit your site. What I'd like to do with cookies, with our newfound knowledge about cookies and this hash, is to use cookies to track the number of votes remaining that every user has on this site. I want that number of votes to start at 5 and decrease by 1 every time they spend a vote. So here I'm stuck in my buy bug again. What data would it be helpful to store in a cookie in order to track how many votes a user has? Yeah, like a count of the number of votes. So like the number of votes they have, or the number of votes they made, or what should we store in that? Voter account or something like that. And what should our value be? 5. Okay, so this will be the number of votes you have remaining. Cool. Damn it. It's cookies, not cookie. Fine. All right, this looks like a good line of code. Let's let the buy bug go. Come on, just do the thing. And hey presto, here in my voter count cookie, I've got a value of 5. This is great. My browser will remember that value of 5 and spit it back to me later. All right. So at this point, we're coming back to this page. Our voter count is still 5. What I'd like to do next is decrease this number when we spend one of our votes. Here's our create action on the votes controller. What do we need to do here? Dan. Cool. Voter count minus equals 1. Cool. Let's give this a whirl. I'm going to take that buy bug out. It's annoying me. No, just that one. Okay. So, oh no. Here's a really important thing about cookies. Here's a bug caused by a really important thing about cookies. Here's an error message. What is it telling me? What do you see? Sorry.
It says the cookie is string number.
Undefined method minus for string 5. Did you mean minus? I don't know what the things we meant, but it's noticing that we're trying to take a string. Every value in the cookie's hash is returned as a string. Every cookie has a value of a string as it gets sent to and from the browser. Even if all that's in that string is 5, Ruby thinks this is a string. So we're not going to be able to use minus equals. Oops, no, over here. We're not going to be able to use minus equals over here. What should we do instead? Dan.
Could you parse it?
Yeah, let's parse it to an integer. And then we'll subtract 1 from it, and then we'll like manually set cookies voter count equals the value of cookies voter count 2i minus 1. Does that look okay? No, you don't like it.
It has to be string, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
The nice thing about Ruby is it will let you coerce integers into strings, but not vice versa. So I think this will work. Earlier, when we set cookies voter count equal to 5, this is an integer, and it lets you do that direction. It's just when you try and treat a string as a number that it blows up. So this will actually work. It also will not hurt anything if we take this and then call 2s on it, but either way, it's totally fine. Let's try this again. Great. Okay, now we can vote. And what's cool is, oh no, our voter count is not going down for some reason. Well, that's weird. Oh, I know why. Who else knows why? This is actually phenomenal as a bug. No, I wanted 2 rows. Here's my colors controller. Two rows, please. Here's my votes controller. Here's my colors controller. It's not a bug with the way that we're setting the cookie, actually. This is totally, totally fine. It's a bug with how we've thought about cookies at all. Sorry.
I do get findings fire.
So we are actually successfully reducing the cookie's voter count to 4. And then we redirect to colors path. This redirect to colors path takes us to the index. And the first thing we do every time the index loads is reassign colors cookies voter count to 5. So if we put a by bug in our index here, we will see what Dario has seen about our code. All right, refreshing here. I'm just going to continue this one. I'm going to make a vote. Was it voter count? Oh, shit. Now it's 4. We're stuck on the by bug right here, and we're about to reassign it to 5. We actually only want to reassign to 5 under certain circumstances. What circumstances do we want to reassign to 5 under? Edwin. If it doesn't already have a number in it. So there's a really handy dandy way of doing this in Ruby. It's called or equals. Anyone remember what or does, the like double pipe? D.
Either one is true.
Yeah.
One of the 2 is true.
Usually we use it in like if statements to see if like one or the other is true. What the or operator actually does is it'll give you the first truthy one of whatever you're doing. So if I do like nil or foo, it'll give me foo. If I do foo or bar, it'll give me foo. What or equals does is sort of like minus equals. It'll take a variable, and if that variable is truthy, it'll do nothing to it. If it's falsy, for example, if it's nil, it'll set it to the value on the right. So at foo is now potato. If I say foo or equals banana now, what's going to happen? Correct. It did not set it to banana because it already had a truthy value. If you want, you can definitely do an if statement. If cookies voter count is not nil, then set it to 5 or leave it. If it otherwise set it to 5. In this case, or equals is a very concise way of setting a default. If we don't already have a cookie voter count, set it to 5. If we do, leave it alone. And now, take a look at what happens. Our voter count is down to 1. And let me vote a couple more times. Great, I have -2 votes. This is working a little bit. Couple things that aren't working. Does anyone notice what they are? It is not actually stopping us from voting any. We're just decreasing that voter count by 1 every time. We're going to have to write in some code that's going to stop me from voting when I shouldn't be able to vote anymore. What else?
Count.
Yeah, our count of votes remaining is not going down at all. The reason for this is that I have hard-coded in my layout a number 5 for votes remaining. So we can fix that too. Edwin, did you see something else, or was it one of those? What's that? Yeah. Cool. All right, let's fix this one first. I'm going to use an instance variable here called votes remaining. And let's set that up in our colors controller. And we'll set it equal to whatever the cookie has for us. Cool, I got -2 votes remaining. Done. Click this, -3. Not so bad. Now, I'm gonna clear my cookies and go back to the way it was. Votes remaining is 5. We're in good shape. I wanna prevent voters from voting unless they have enough votes to do so. What should I do and where? Dan.
Do a conditional.
Where should I do a conditional?
Right after, right after line 4.
Right after line 4. Okay. If
Voter count is not equal.
got it. Okay. Let's do this. Oh, right, because this is reducing it. So if cookies voter count UI bang equals, I'm going to say is greater than 0. Just in case we have a -2 in there for some reason. They still shouldn't be able to vote. Then we reduce the voter count. Cool. All right. What about this line 4? That's the line that actually creates the vote. Dario.
Move everything above.
Okay. So like just this part of it or the whole thing? Okay, cool. So if we've got a voter count that's greater than 0, then we create a new vote and we set the voter count to 1 less than it was before. In the end, we'll redirect to the colors path either way. Sound good? All right, let's try it. Nice. All right. I don't know what happened the first couple times, but yeah. All right, we're at 0 votes, and I can no longer vote for this number 19. This is pretty great. I like this. I'm actually gonna like carry this through the UI a little bit, and I'm gonna say can vote equals at votes remaining is greater than 0. And I'm going to use this at can vote over here in the index and just give us a little emoji on the, oh, come on. Comparison of string with 0 failed. Fine. Colors controller, 2i. Ugh, hate 2i. Okay, so now we've got some UI feedback that this voter can no longer vote. I'm going to clear my cookies again, just so we can see the full transformation of this button, which I'm very proud of. Come on. Do the thing. 3, 2, 1. And nice. I like this a lot. I like this a lot. There is one more problem with this code. It is not a UI problem. It is, in fact, a security problem. Serena, what is it?
Beyond being able to reopen the page and do something.
Yes. When we're working with cookies, there's always the issue that users can clear their own cookies or open an incognito window and get more views on New York Times or more votes in a poll. Sort of like maybe a bracket to determine the code. Oh wait, that was horrible. Never mind. I was going to send some shade. But yes, that is always a security hole with cookies. There was some about that. Shouldn't be spreading shit around. What other security hole do we have besides that? Yeah. This would be the equivalent of like you grabbing the last name tag and just like writing yourself a new name and then showing up to the server all like, hey, I'm Kim Kardashian. Give me my giant ring. I don't know. Yes, users, at least users who've installed this Chrome extension or any similar ones, can tamper with their cookies. So if I put like a really big number in here, what do you suppose will happen if I refresh this page? Daria. Infinity votes. All right, did I do that right? Hold on. Enter. Maybe. Come on. I don't love this browser extension for this exact reason. Yes, a very large number of votes. Serena. Oh, could we use a validation? If the number of votes is greater than 5, then like, let's break. Yeah. We're actually going to use something even cooler than a validation in a sec. Yes, you probably could. You could call out your users who are tampering with their cookies. To be clear, most users are not going to think to do this. But the ones who will are the ones you should be really worried about. Similarly to strong params. Don't trust any information you get back from a user as being within the bounds of acceptable values that you've decided. Users can and will put anything into any input of your website, including cookies, including form data, and your validations, your strong params, and what we're about to do next needs to prevent invalid input from affecting the flow of your application. I can spend these votes because our application is set up to take whatever is in that cookie as a valid number of votes. This could be a huge problem. It's much easier to tamper with one cookie than it is to open, oh, I don't know, this number divided by 5 incognito tabs. So we're going to use something else. We're going to use the session in order to prevent this. Who knows something about the session? All right, please do the off labs. Ashley.
I know sessions from Ruby, and it's like hashes.
Yes, it's another hash that Rails gives us.
Yeah.
It's a part of Rails, another hash that's named session instead of cookies. Session works a lot like the cookies hash does. In fact, I can sort of like session, just like do a really fast and dirty find and replace on the word cookies. And this should actually work about the same. Let's reset everything. Look at those 3,000 colors. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Where's my cookie though? Sorry.
And you put it through that long hash.
Yeah, it's put into this long garbage like thing. What is that thing? Yes. So the session works on cookies. But it is not just cookies. It's a very special kind of cookie. Before Rails puts any kind of data into the session cookie, it encrypts it. It puts it into a sort of lockbox, a virtual lockbox, where Rails knows the combination, can get in and get at that data, but it puts it in that lockbox, hands the lockbox to you, the user. You can't get into the lockbox, but the lockbox still holds those values. Then you give the lockbox back to Rails, Rails opens it up, sees the values, and is like, okay, you still have 5 votes, or 0 votes, or 1 vote, or 2 votes. I, as the user, cannot get into the lockbox and tamper with my number of votes because it's encrypted. It's been cryptographically transformed into this value in a way that is really, really hard for me, the user, to decrypt without information that only Rails has, the combination of the safe. If I clear my cookies, it's the same as if the value is stored directly in a cookie. We're still not getting around that particular flaw in this design. But the session makes it so that I can't just put 999,000 votes in and get Rails to accept it. And that's a really important thing. If we were to put the user ID of the user just straight up in a cookie, and that user ID was 5, doesn't take a brain surgeon to try and put in 6 and see if they're logged in as someone else. And yes, if we use just plain old cookies, that is exactly what would happen. The session is encrypted, so it's much more secure for things like authentication, or just for tracking a number of votes. The other real advantage of the session is that all of the things that you put in the session keep their data types, so we can get rid of all of these 2i's. Yay! We can use minus equals now. Minus equals. We don't have to toString this anymore. This is great. Or equals 5. Votes remaining is just session voter count. Can vote is votes remaining 0. Okay, cool. So vote, 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 vote. Can't vote anymore. Yeah. Questions about the session? Edwin.
It's like sessions and cookies.
Similar things. The important difference is the session is encrypted, so users can't tamper with it.
So like, I can treat it like a cookie.
The browser, it works based on cookies, so it's like cookies plus.
Oh,
Yeah, everything that is true about cookies is true about the session, except that session is encrypted. Like this session cookie that we've seen is still transmitted via a header. It's just that the value is obfuscated to the user. It's inaccessible. It's not changeable by the user. If I try and like change this to 99999, Rails is like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not a valid session. I'm just going to give you 5 votes again. I'm going to reset the session entirely, clear out all the values because you've given me something I don't understand. And yes, okay, I do get 5 votes every time. But what I hope you've got is an understanding of sessions and cookies and why it's important not to just use cookies for sensitive values. Sam.
And wouldn't you want to use session for anything?
I don't think there's a good reason not to use session, honestly. Even if, like, for stuff like, what's the language that you're using on this website? If a user wants to tamper with that, go ahead. For anything that's remotely secure, yeah, absolutely use the session. I think it maybe uses like a teeny tiny bit of extra overhead on the Rails side, but the only thing about session is if you wanted to use cookies in conjunction with JavaScript, JavaScript wouldn't be able to decrypt the session. So maybe there's a cookie that works on both JavaScript and the server side. Twitter has this actually. If I go to Twitter and I switch this to dark mode, it'll actually set a cookie called night mode right here. And with this cookie, I can set it to 0, and boom, immediately it's back on not night mode. So JavaScript can use cookies. We're not going to even talk about that till mod 3, and maybe even then, not at all. Yeah, I think the session is a better default than a cookie if you're going to just pick one. Anything else about the session? I want to do a little bit of refactoring and then talk about Flash, but we're like ahead of time, so let it rip. All right, let's refactor. Actually, first let's talk about Flash. Flash is fun. Flash is like the session, but it only sticks around for one subsequent request. It's another hash that you can pass a key to and set a value in. And its values are specific to the user who made the request where the value is set. So my Flash is not your Flash. And it's really good for things like notifications. Notifications generally want to stick around for one request, so you get like a notification that something happened, like your dog was successfully created, dog was successfully deleted. And then it goes away automatically without you having to like clear that out manually yourself. No matter what action you go to next, the next request that you yourself make, you'll have this value in the Flash. So, if I wanted to leave a little notification that says that you don't have any votes left if you've run out of votes, and or a notification that you just voted for a specific color. You just voted for, come on. Oh, I don't know. Let's look at our schema. What do I call this? Hex, just plain hex. Great. I can then use this notification elsewhere. And even display it in a view. I have a header inside of a header. It's probably not a good idea, is it? Let's make a paragraph. I think I have a class around here for notification. Sort this out at notification. Okay, nothing yet. When I vote, it tells me I just voted for CAOFF. If I refresh, it's gone. Let me actually fix this up a little bit because I want an actual hashtag before the color number. And for some reason, my CSS class is not working the way I hoped it would. So let's look at my style sheet. Colors, color, votes, votes, message. I called it message, of course. P class message. Vote for something new. There we go. That's what I wanted. CAOFF. I don't have any votes left. I can't vote anymore. But again, if I refresh, it's in the flash, new request, the flash is gone. The flash, interestingly enough, is also stored in that cookie. I don't know why they made that choice, but if you grab an old session out and slap it back in, your flash will come back. Also, good to know, if I'm at 2 votes, let's clear this cookie out. 4, 3, 2, oh, Nike. All right. Let me grab this session value right here. I'm going to copy it. Now I'm going to spend the rest of my votes. I don't have any votes left. Not for long. If I put my session back in there, now I've got 2 votes again. So sessions aren't like impervious to any kind of like tomfoolery. I've basically like kept one of the safes that Rails gave to me. I can't modify that too that's inside of there, but I can keep the safe and be like, hey Rails, here's my session from before. So if you've got a value in session that shouldn't be accessible and shouldn't be like replayable later, store it in the database. The actual right way to do this, the most secure way of doing this, is storing the number of votes an individual user has made and deducting each vote they make from a total that is of votes remaining. If that's attached to a user ID that you shot of the session, then they have no opportunity to replay the session at all. But we're going to do that tomorrow. All right, I want to clean this up a little bit, refactoring wise, but questions about Flash? Talk to me.
What is it that when websites are collecting, people are getting this data, like, so it's storing, is it storing more than just, what's it actually storing?
What's actually in the cookie is probably nothing more than a unique identifier. You to them are like user 6,586. But based on what you click on, if that data is associated with that user ID, I can see sort of your trajectory through the website. I can see all of the articles that you went to. It's not that I know that you as a human are associated with this behavior pattern, but if I can correlate different actions that you've taken on different parts of the website, I have your whole user journey through that website. And that's really valuable for marketers and for UI testers, for people who want to use that information to basically make the website better for you, but also people who want to take your money.
So like if I am on looking up pictures of black holes in the New York Times, I might get the ad for NASA's new whatever.
Maybe, yeah. And
they're not looking at me, they're just looking at that cookie.
Right. So one interesting thing about cookies is the cookies the New York Times sets for me are not viewable on Twitter or any other website. The way that advertisers get around this, the reason I keep getting Uniqlo ads and everything, is that the ad networks that are running bits of this page inside of boxes like this one right here. So this is an iframe to an actual other website on a completely different domain with a completely different set of cookies. But the ad networks have done smart things with those cookies. So they've got information about you from other third parties. Uniqlo has sort of watched me and knows what I want to buy, and it's usually the sales. And they've transmitted that data through another means to an advertising partner that tracks me using a cookie they dropped on their URL and correlates it with that data. There's a lot of other infrastructure beyond cookies that needs to go into that, but cookies are what stick to me as a browser and as a user of Chrome to uniquely identify, like, this one is the one you want to send those ads to. What else? Edwin, you had your hand up before.
Oh, like is like Flash formatted the same as like cookies?
I think so. So a weird thing happened just now where, like, I said that the cookie was in the Flash. But now if I go here and, like, put this back in, and I don't think it's going to be there. Yeah. I think it's there for the request that is the create. Like, the cookie that's in there at the end of this, that's the cookie that actually contains the Flash. And by the time I'm here, the Flash has, like, been cleared already, and that's why it doesn't show up. But I have tried this before, and it does actually contain the notification, if I remember correctly. Give it a whirl. But yeah, I think it is in there. Mike.
Could it be because when you're editing the session, not Flash?
It's actually in the session itself.
Oh,
Yeah. Do you want to see this? Or I think I can do it. Let me just do, well, is that going to work? Here, let's do this, and then we'll refactor. Okay, I'm going to push this to the bottom, network tab. All right, let's vote. So this is the GET request, and the request headers have the favorite colors session from, like, right after we've voted. So let's grab this value. You just voted for CAOOFF, votes remaining 0. I'm going to refresh, and let's stick this back in there. Check. Yeah, there it is. So by the time we're done with the index, the Flash has changed, the cookie has changed in here. If you go back and grab the cookie that was at the end of this create request and before the index comes, then you get back the notification. Yeah. All right. Pay attention to this, please, because we're going to do a lot of this kind of refactoring tomorrow. And I want you to get a sense for how it works. So I've got a bunch of different references to session voter count all over my 2 controllers. And at this point, I have 2 controller actions, 2 controllers at all. So this isn't a huge problem, but if this voter count needs to touch more controllers, I'm going to have a really, really bad issue. I'd like to consolidate this and put it on the application controller itself. The reason I'm going to do this is that that session information can stay on the application controller, and my individual controllers can access it using methods. Cool? I'm going to make a method called setupVotingStuff. And I'm going to move all of these bits out of my index and into that method. All of these lines of code have to do with getting or setting a number of votes from the session and setting up instance variables for our views to use. So far, I only have one view. It's this index view. But if I had other views that needed to use the number of votes remaining, if I have any other views on this site, it's not going to work. So consolidating this code into one method that gets called perhaps by the index or perhaps on every action in my entire app will future-proof it for any views that need to use can vote or notification as instance variables. I can do this with a before action. And I'm going to have this before action run in my application controller What this will do is it'll make any controller that inherits from application controller run this setup voting stuff method before any of the actions site-wide. This is powerful, not to be abused. Don't put anything in this method that you don't need to do literally on every action in your entire site. But it's really powerful. And it's a way of making this work. So still can't vote. Clear my cookies. Oh no. Try that again. All right, here we go. I'm not done. In my colors controller, I think I'm good. I've got no references to the session anymore, but in my votes controller, I'm making some comparisons based on the session. The cool thing about this if is that it's referencing the same conditional as this @CanVote variable. So I can refactor this and just say if @CanVote. My votes controller doesn't need to know anything about the session anymore because setup voting stuff on the application controller is determining whether a user can vote or not. I have one decision for what defines whether a user can vote or not, rather than two separate places that have the same code. I'm making this way more dry. And I'm getting votes controller out of the business of being the arbiter of who can and can't vote. It's just a consumer of the decision that was already made on line 8 in the before action. I'm going to move this out and turn it into a method. Use one vote. Use one vote. And I'll leave the flash stuff in, that's fine. But at this point, all of my session stuff is in two methods that are right next to each other in the application controller and out of their respective controllers. Let me test this again. Good, still works. The more dry you can make your session code, the better off you can be. I can go further and move this into a helper of some sort, but I don't want to get into that right now. The reason I can't move this into a model is that we're working with the session, which is a controller level construct. But this code is a lot better than it was before. It's a lot more dry, it's a lot more maintainable, and I've set myself up for success in the future where I might have more pages on my site, which we will tomorrow. Questions about this refactor?
So if you do that before action in the application controller, like any instance variables you create in that, you can use anywhere in the site.
Anywhere in any action. Mm-hmm. And also in your layout. I would say that any instance variable you use in your layout should probably be defined in a before action in your application controller, because your layout applies to every page in the site. Your application controller does too. It's a handy way of making sure that that instance variable will be there once you try and use it. Otherwise, you're going to get errors, and that's not going to be fun. Or maybe it will. Errors can be fun. I don't know. Questions, comments? Okay, go to Auth Labs. It'll make tomorrow a lot better for all of us. I've got a lot